Hi folks, I hope you're well. So no football again today. I believe the people that normally play went down the beach again. I phoned up someone afterwards saying, what's happening? They said, oh, we've been taking a rest from the football. Yeah. They said they'd be there. Well, he said they'd be there next week, so find out. Yeah. Anyway, after I went down there, I had to go down to the to get my new glasses. Well, for seeing things that are really close. Yeah. As I was walking down, the community church was doing something for charity, washing people's cars. So there was 3 women sitting down. So I went over to say hello. The one of the women said, "You have to leave. You're not welcome." I said, "Excuse me, I'm just coming over to say hello." She said, "No, you're not welcome. You have to leave." I said, "Really?" Like that. I said, "Really?" She went, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, I can tell you where you're not welcome." I said, "Well, obviously, for you to say what you said, you've already judged me, condemned me, and not forgiven me for whatever." I said, I don't care about the reason at all. That's your issue, not mine." I said, "Therefore, you'll be judged, condemned, and not forgiven. So therefore, why are you here? Because you're still of the world. So you're not going to heaven. That's why you're here. Pretending you're of the church." Yeah. Anyway, the pastor was in the area, so I spoke to the pastor and said, "Oh, yeah, that woman over there says I'm not welcome, I have to leave." And I told him exactly what I said to her. And he said, "Well, she shouldn't have said that." I said, "Yeah." I said, "But that's her issue, not mine." So I don't care. I only went over to say hello. And basically, she said the way she said is basically, "Fuck off." I said, "Okay. That's her problem, not mine." Because she thinks she's saying it in a nice way. She even said, "If you don't leave, we're going to call the police." I said, "Excuse me, I'm outside the church. I can be here." Stupid bloody woman. Idiot. Actually, very interesting. The person I spoke to on the phone about the football, I met him in the high street and I told him about that woman. And he said, "Really?" And then I had a chance to talk to him about what God has been telling me about that sort of situations. And yeah, and about how basically most people in the church have the same what's it called? Jeez, come on, brain, work. Well, the way they do things is exactly the same as people in the world. I said because they're still of the world, and yeah, because most churches are of the world. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I spoke to him about a few things. So maybe a few things that I said to him, hopefully one of those or a few things, will actually stick in his mind, and he will go to the Father about it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I was talking to the pastor and I said to the pastor about the video last night. Yeah. And I said to him, yeah, I got quite annoyed when I was thinking about what people say. When they say if you're worshipping the Son, you're basically worshipping the Spirit and the Father, because obviously the Spirit and the Father are God. So therefore you're worshipping God. I said, oh, I said, that's from the devil. Saying basically that. I said to him, they think they know more than the Son of God. Because obviously, did the Son of God know that basically the Father, the Son, and the Spirit are God? They're basically saying he didn't know that. And he didn't know if you're worshipping the Son or the Spirit, then you're worshipping God. No, that's not the bloody point. He said you're supposed to be worshipping who? The Father. Why? Because the relationship you should have with is the Father. Right? The Son, well, okay. Let's start earlier. You have to know the Son first, right? Then the Spirit will tell you more about the Son, and that the Son is pointing to the Father, right? So basically, the Spirit tells you the Son is pointing to the Father. Then you go through the Son to the Father, right? Because the Son says, yeah, come on. You can't go through me. No, he didn't. He said, you can't go to the Father unless you go through me. Which means you can go through him to the Father. Stupid. It is stupid. When people say that crap, it's a devil telling them to say that, because the devil knows exactly what the Lord was saying and why, and he knows. If you know that, and if you do what the Lord said, your relationship with God will be with the Father, and therefore your life will be better because you're walking in his way and his will. So therefore, the devil wants to stop you walking in his way. And therefore, that's why basically I said, okay, let them do that. Let them do that. If they want to do that, I won't help them. No. Again, that's the blinking point. And that's why basically I've said before, when I go back to those churches, when God says, okay, you're ready, go and tell them. When I go to those churches, no. When I go to churches like that, no. No. No, of course not. I will go to churches that are trying to do exactly what the Lord says. They're trying to do it. Churches that are basically trying to do the same as every other church. No, I'm not going to help them, because basically helping them is going to be a lot harder. Because obviously, if they don't want to try to do God's way, okay, you're not of God. So if you're not of God, why should I try to help you? There's no point. You're not my brother, are you? Spiritually, you're not my brother because you're not of God. So why should I? Again, it's easier for me to actually tell someone who doesn't know God at all and teach them than people in church don't want to try to do God's way. So there you go. Enjoy. Well, actually, one thing I will say is, yeah, with that woman, I said to the man, in the high street, if I had the power, the authority of God, that woman would be in hell already. What I would have done, if she was saying to me, and if I had the authority, and someone says to me, you have to leave, you're not welcome, I would say to that person, you've got 5 minutes to go to God and ask God and listen why what you're doing is completely wrong and how that's going to hurt you. 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, I'm going to tell that person's heart, stop. If they don't have the answer. So the reason is completely, most people never go to the Father. Never. So that person has a chance to deal with it. Also, for the other people in that area, they can learn from that when that person doesn't do it. Right? Either way, it can help the other people in that area who will see what happens. It can help them. So therefore, that's the reason. I don't care about that woman at all. Why should I? Why should I? If she dies and doesn't die, I don't care. Again, with her and people like her, if she wants to judge people, condemn people, and not forgive people, and basically saying she's still of God, then it'd be better for her to be dead. Because she's leading people to where? To hell. So therefore, yeah, it's better for other people, for her family, her friends, for her to be dead. Because she's leading them to hell. So therefore, maybe they've got a chance if she's not there. Right? They've got a better chance to go to heaven if that woman is not there anymore. Especially if they know that she died because she didn't go to God. Right? What are they going to do? Enjoy.